What is up, guys, and welcome to the Overflow. We have Lauren Kelly on today. How are we doing?
We're doing great. Hey, guys.
Yeah, so today you can kind of tell from the title, we're going to talk about drawing away with God and just the secret place and the invitation that He has for everyone to go there. So, just to start off, I would love for you to just kind of tell a little bit of your journey and just some of your testimony in the secret place.
Yeah. Okay. So, in high school, I not even just high school, like middle school, high school, elementary, everything. I was super busy. I was kind of known as like a busybody. And like I think that if someone were to ask me like, how would you describe yourself in a few words, whatever, I would probably put busybody in like that description. I don't know that that's an adjective, but anyways. And people pleaser, busybody, fun loving is another way to just like mask the fact that I needed to be busy all the time, and in order to feel full. But getting to college, I kind of realized that unless I drew some limitations and boundaries for myself of like being so busy, that I was just gonna get caught up in the world,
Yeah.
which is just something I didn't know anything about. And then, so that was like a practice that I started putting into place of like just limiting my schedule. It wasn't necessarily like stillness before God, it was just like creating some space in my schedule, or like the college girls know, like the Google Calendar goes crazy. And like creating some spaces where it was just like, okay, this is designated time of like, I don't have anything planned and I can just go sit and do my quiet time, or like I like to write, or like I like to draw, and just kind of like giving him time to just sit with him and do stuff. But it was still very like active, like I had to be doing something, or like going on walks with God, which I think is awesome and still something I do on like Sabbath. I do those things. So that's really important. But then going into second semester, I took a class called Emotionally Healthy Relationships at my church, ACC, and that kind of introduced, I had started sitting in silence and stillness before God, like in the first semester, but it was never like a regular rhythm for me, until I started taking that class, and we just like learned more about that and what that looks like. And it really just transformed the way I interacted with God, of like, I came to such like a desperate place of needing anything from him. I think people told me like over and over and over again in high school, and just like mentors and even like podcast books, anything people would say like sitting in silence will change your relationship with God, which is true. And I could hear that all I wanted to, but I was such a busybody and so labeled with that as like an identity that I would never have actually done it. So it came to a point of like desperation and like needing rest. Like my soul needed rest.
Yeah.
And like even just like a wind of him and his presence was enough for me. And so that's when it started incorporating first semester. But then the class really changed my life because we learned like the motive behind it and how to incorporate it into your everyday, which really changed it, transformed it. You want me to go into like how it changed?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to hear that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, everyone's probably heard. Maybe you haven't. Like, we we kind of treat God a lot of the time like Santa in the sky. Like we're just like asking him a bunch of questions. Like we're like, can you give me this? Can you give me this? Or like, it's not asking for him for something. It's like, oh, I'm telling him stuff. But then we get mad and we're like, wait, I'm not hearing from God. I can't hear him, whatever. And it's like, well, have you given him any space to talk? Like, probably not. And if you have, you're limiting him to your 2 minutes quiet time in the morning, and then you go straight into the scriptures, which are awesome. And God does speak through the scriptures. But a lot of the time we don't give him space to speak. And so I just am so, like, all of us are so sinful and selfish in nature. And so I didn't even realize that was like a thing in my life, in my story, of just not even giving like the Lord of everything room to speak in my life, which is just crazy to think about now. But once I started giving him that space, like, you cannot leave God's presence in the same way that you came in. Like, whether that's you gain peace or a word of wisdom from him or a scripture is put on your heart, a song, someone to talk to, like, there's always something that you're going to leave with. And truly, at the bare minimum, you're going to leave with a sense of peace. And just like, okay, at least I have like relinquished control and just like given a situation or a problem or a concern, or even if you're coming in the happiest girl in the world, I am still going to leave feeling restored. I mean, like Psalm 23, he leads me beside still waters, not chaotic waters.
Yeah.
He restores my soul. So it's like at the end of whatever quiet time, whatever silence and stillness, I'm leaving with something, and anything from him is enough. Some days my quiet time, when I say quiet time, like I'm talking about like the stillness aspect of like literally just like sitting. And sometimes I leave with like, I'm like, okay, God, nothing, like, did not have any crazy moments, and like I can't expect that of him. And it's also a practice of like, it is discipline, and it takes a long time to get like, it's not about getting good at it, but it takes a lot of time to get comfortable with it maybe, and to get disciplined in like focusing your thoughts, just because we are so chaotic and crazy in our day-to-day. But sometimes I leave with like a word from God, and I'm like, wow, he really transformed the way I viewed this situation. But sometimes I'm leaving with literally just like a stillness of like, okay, I can move on with my day, and like this is still annoying me and like frustrating me, but at least I know that it's not in my control, and I took the time to sit back and relinquish that control to him.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, yeah. And I think a lot of what you're saying just comes from what you're talking about, just a position of dependence and a position of just like, God, I give you control. And something that one of our friends actually said to us last night, his name is Brendan, was he was talking about prayer, and then we're doing a prayer course by John Mark Comer with ACC, and in the prayer course it said, until you break down all the false images you have of God, you're never going to be truly drawn to prayer. And I think that even take it a step further, until you break down all the false images you have of God, you're never going to be drawn to stillness with him.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think a lot of that is, I kind of like flipping those questions to where if I'm not drawn to go and sit with the Lord quietly, and I'm not operating out of a fullness of that, what false image do I have of God that is making me not drawn to that? Like, do I think that something with works is going to carry me? Do I think that something I do for God is going to make my quiet time better? Or do I just recognize him as the good shepherd he is and relinquish control and just know that I'm a sheep and I know who I'm following? And I think that that's just so powerful, even when it says, and David writes later in Psalms, that the one who abides in the quiet place will dwell in the shadow of the Lord. And even John in the Gospels writes, like, abide in me. How can you bear fruit without the vine? And abiding is the root of fruit. So if we're going to abide in God, we have to abide in the quiet as well. We can't just choose to get in the chaos and then, wow, this week's chaotic. Oh, I need something. Like God, like you're saying, he's not a Santa Claus in the sky. He's a God that deeply wants to know you and wants a personal relationship with you. And so I would even love for you to kind of talk about some practices you've put forward to deepen that personal relationship, because everyone's time looks differently. But if you wanted to share just some of those practices that you've seen completely transform and make that easier, I think that'd be really helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah. Okay. So practically speaking, for me, that looks like I usually start my mornings with silence with God, before phone, homework, whatever. And so that's also starting small. Like, they said last night at the prayer course something about don't start where you want to be, start where you're at with prayer. And it's the same way with stillness with God. Like if you've never sat, which I hadn't before this year, so I'm relatively new at this as well, very new at this as well. But start where you're at. So I never sat with God, just literally in silence and like an open heart. And so I started with like 2 minutes. And sometimes that's all I have. And so if I'm like in a rush that morning, I can give 2 minutes to God and not put on my mascara. Like it's fine. And so I will like just sit there. And for me, that looks like hands postured open and just like sitting, closing my eyes. Sometimes if I'm having hard time focusing just because of like surrounding, like construction or something around the dorm, I will put on just like some sort of ambiance music, which they played that in high school, and they used to play that in high school when we were like reading in class, and it stuck with me, I guess. Shout out Miss Christian. But anyways, so I'll like play that, but so usually I just try and be silent because it is so overstimulating, just our world. And I don't come to God with anything prayer wise. It's genuinely just like, God, come and have your way in this time. It's really helpful to have like breath prayers, if you've heard that term, of just like a simple prayer of like, come Lord Jesus, Holy Spirit, fill this room. Have your way in this time. Things like that. Because that can just like focus your brain on Him. So whenever I get distracted, which happens, sometimes it takes me the entire 20 minutes to actually focus my thoughts and just guide them back to Him. And it's okay, like passing thoughts are going to happen, but just taking those thoughts that keep coming into your brain and like giving them to Him instead of being like, oh shoot, like why can I not do this? Like why can I not just like sit and like clear my brain? That's okay. Just bring them to Him and be like, hey God, here's the thought that keeps coming in my brain. Like you can take this, and then recentering back to come Lord Jesus, or whatever that is for you. So that is kind of what it looks like for me. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it looks like. Like it's pretty daunting once you get past literally 10 minutes because we're just so bad at sitting still and not bringing Him stuff. We're so needy, and He loves that. And like the fact that we're dependent on Him is so beautiful and awesome. But sometimes it's good just to like sit and not expect anything from Him other than His presence. Like He does everything for us. We would not be here right now without Him. Yeah. And just like dwelling with Him is a way of just inviting Him into the whole day. It's called the daily office. And that comes from like deep history in the church, Jewish and history and the Israelites, and even Daniel. In like throughout Daniel, you can read about how he would regularly meet with God 3 times a day. And like King David brings it up. The Psalms are full of encouragement for the quiet place. Be still and know that I am God. Silence is praise to you, Zion dwelling God. You hear the prayer in it all. Like there's just so many verses that I can think of that go back to quiet place, but it's because those people just valued that silence before God in such a different way that we don't. And it's because the sacred and the secular, they can exist at once. Like our world does not have to be so secular all the time and be like, okay, and then this is my quiet time in the morning. Like we're just putting God in a box of like, okay, this is my hour or 30-minute quiet time, and then the rest of my day, and then I'll meet with Him again when I pray. It's like, no, if we invite Him into the quiet time over and over again throughout our day, like sometimes for me that looks like a 5-minute car ride. I'll just like turn off the music or walk into class even. Like it's loud outside, but I can be quiet and rest and not be on all the time. And that is what like, they don't have to be like secular and like they just don't have to be the same or 2 different things. Like secular and sacred can overlap and be everywhere at once.
Yeah, that's good.
But only with him, and like when you're inviting him into that stillness. So the daily office is like 3 times a day. But a lot of the time for me, it's like 2 minutes here, 5 minutes here. I start my day with longer ones because I have more time. But yeah, just like any time you have to give him. That's something I fasted from for 21 days of prayer. I fasted from all media. So like that was another turning point of like this whole practice. So like all social media, all podcasts, music, TV, movies, anything like that. And so I had nothing better to do. Like if I was in the car or like walking to class or those are like 2 of the major ones. Just like when I'm traveling, I can't listen to anything. So might as well just sit. And sometimes I'm like, I don't even have anything to say, God. Like, so I'm just going to sit. But sometimes it's like, okay, I just need you to like abide in me and I'll abide in you, and rest for the soul is just, okay, I'm not going to bring anything to you right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love just you talking about giving him what you can give. So if that's a 5-minute walk, great, and just seeking him in the little things. I even think like some of my mentors would say to me, just like ask God what you should wear today, or ask God what you should eat. And it sounds really stupid. It really does. But the root of it's not being really what you're going to wear, but just getting in the practice of surrendering small decisions to the Lord. Because if we can learn to surrender small decisions to the Lord, then our first line of defense and our first practice in the big is going to go directly to God. Because a habit, our first instinct is a habit we build. Our first instinct isn't something that you can really as much practice, because it's just what you first go to. It's your natural instinct. So in order to build a habit of a first instinct, you can't just randomly expect to go to it in the chaos, because like what we cultivate in the quiet is going to carry us in the chaos. So we have to focus on cultivating small little things so that the big things. I even talked about it in one of the earlier episodes, like David, like shepherding his flock, and just that season of preparation before kingship is God didn't just anoint him and then out of nowhere he's just a king making all these big decisions. He's like, no, I have you in this season for a reason. And golly, that rhymed. That was kind of cheesy. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay.
But I even love too what you said of like sitting there and like not putting expectations on God, because I think a lot of times expectations can kill the quiet place. And it's not saying that you shouldn't pray with expectancy. Like you should
Yeah,
definitely
it's
go into the
different.
quiet place with expectancy that God's going to show up, because he promises he will, but not bind him to expectations, because he's a God that can far exceed expectations. And normally the expectations we put on him are outcomes that we want to happen. And some of the biggest blessings in my life have been things that I was praying towards and the Lord pulled me away from, and just seeing him continuing to bless and far more than I was even expecting him to, in the yes that I was desiring. But it was like, no, I have so much. Like God never takes away gold for
Yeah.
silver. That's something Courtney Slavinsky always says to me, who was on it last week. Is like, God never takes gold away and gives you silver. He always wants what's best for you. So I think that's awesome. And even I feel like with my time in the quiet place, it's even trained me to be a better listener to other people. Like learning to listen to God has trained me in listening well to others. I would love to hear if that's been a part of your story. Like, has that helped you relate to other people more, or like developed your friendships even deeper, knowing seeking God in the quiet?
Wait, yeah. I'll circle back to that. I have so many thoughts. My first thought is okay. I have so many thoughts. Okay, my first thought is that it's kind of crazy to think about, but like the practices that I make right now, and the habits I get into and the routines I get into are the routines I'm going to carry into marriage, motherhood, working a 9 to 5, whatever that looks like in my future. So, although I'm a freshman in college, these like 3 years, I guess I have left, are so important, because when I am a mom working like whatever, I'm not going to have hours to sit with the Lord.
Yeah.
So if I like implement those routines of like getting up early, like I promise you, you can get up an hour earlier.
Yeah.
I promise you, you can. And in fact, I think that's the most sacred space. Like, if the sun is still down, that is when I connect with the Lord the most. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So I promise you, you can. And if you need a push to do it, like, this is your push. You can do hard things. And also, discipline is part of Christianity. So
Yeah.
push
that's
yourself
good.
in that. But also, second thought is that when I encourage anyone listening, I would have been freaked out by this a year ago. And I would have considered myself pretty in tune with God. But that was because my relationship with Him was purely religion. I have an awesome family, and I had awesome friends in high school. And I went to the awesome school, and it was so cool that I grew up with that, but I didn't know what it looked like to like listen to God, and allow that to influence my days. So I just want to encourage anyone listening to this, if this sounds crazy and scary to you, and like if you're listening to Cooper talk about God asking what he should eat for breakfast, like I understand because I would be freaked out too, but it's like a practice. It is a practice. And if you allow him into that nervousness, or even if you're sitting there and you're like, this is so weird, they're so weird, I challenge you to invite the Lord into that, because he is willing to change your mind and perspective on it if you allow him to. And a lot of the times our fears are masks for insecurity or where we're not allowing the Lord in.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
I would just invite you into that. And then third off, I have kind of a funny story. So one time, my community group knows this, and we all laugh about it. But it was actually during 21 Days of Prayer when I was done with media. I was like living my solo life. Like I was trying to quiet the noise basically, because like it's like this in high school, but especially in college, like everything is going on so fast. Like your mind is always spinning. What do I need to eat for lunch? What do I need to go do? My to-do list, my Google Calendar. Like I need to delete the Google Calendar, I think, because it is obviously causing me some issues. But anyways, I was like so caught up in that. So I went to nothing, 21 Days of Prayer. And it's very easy. There's a line between over spiritualizing things and like listening to the Lord's voice. But he also just wants to be there with you through your day to day. Anyways, during 21 Days of Prayer, I was so in tune with the Lord's voice of like the most random things I would invite him into. Like you were talking about, of just like, why not? I mean, he's there for a reason. Might as well bring him into it. So one day I was walking to class, and I guess I just didn't want to go to class. I don't really know what was going on. But I'm walking from Boyd down to class, and I pressed the button for the light to turn on for the walking sign, and for some reason it just like turned off, and the other light turned on to go the other way, and I was like, God, like, do you not want me to go to class right now, and you want me to go that way and just like follow your lead? And I was like, wait, what the heck? My community group laughs about that, because like that was so my human desire, but there was something to learn in it, because like you can tell the Lord's voice a lot of the time by how it lines up with scripture and his character.
Yeah.
But also you can tell based on like your own human desire. So my human desire in that moment, this is like a silly example, and it's funny that I was like, so I don't even know. It was funny. And I'm not a very serious person, so I think we all just think that was a weird occasion. But you could tell in that moment that it was not God speaking to me and telling me to skip class and go down that random street, because my human desire just wanted to skip class. So like a lot of the time in bigger situations that are a little bit more intense, if you really get to the root of like what you want to happen and like what's going to benefit you, a lot of the times the Lord's calling us to the opposite. Not always, but the thing that you're scared to do is a lot of the time what he's calling you into.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to kind of tell what is God, what is not, because hearing the Lord's voice in quiet time is super challenging, and it can make you second guess a lot. Okay, back to your question of, sorry, so much. Back to your question of listening. I just think that, to put it simply, like, I was in high school, I was so consumed with my own agenda, that, and I didn't realize that at the time, but I can look back and know that with confidence. I was so consumed with that I didn't give people the time and space and availability to be there for them in that way. So listening was not part of my vocabulary. I mean, like, my family, my sweet mom, I think every week we would have the conversation of, like, being a listener and not having to be right all the time. Like, seriously, growing up, that was always the case. Every dinner table, I was getting in trouble for that, and rightly so, because I just didn't know what that looked like to listen. And honestly, I wouldn't have conjured that up and gained. I'm not a good, perfect listener now. I'd say I'm better for sure. But I would not have been able to gain that by myself. It truly was like, if I can at least listen to, like, my Heavenly Father, keeper and creation of all time, like, if I can listen to him, then I can listen to the people around me and love them well, because that is a way of showing love. So it has definitely made me a better listener.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but I'll never know how. But it has been because of that, and him just doing a new work in me, because he's a listener, obviously. I mean, he listens to us ramble on all day about our wants, our needs, our situations. So when we're growing to look more like him, of course, we're going to be better listeners.
Yeah, and I think the reason it's even so hard is because it's so countercultural.
Yeah.
Like, everything in this world is so loud, and even, like, think back to when Jesus was living. He was countercultural. The reason he had so many followers, and the reason he ultimately died and people wanted to kill him, was because Jesus was countercultural. So when we look at life that abides in Jesus, it should be a countercultural life because he's a countercultural God. And
Yeah.
I even think, like, the enemy, it even says his plan is chaos. You know what the opposite of chaos is? Quiet.
Yeah.
Like, the opposite of chaos, peace. And God's character is peace. And in order to find peace, we have to get in the quiet. And I even think of, like, if I were to lean over and whisper to you, you're going to have to lean in to hear. And I think that's what Jesus is calling everyone here to, is, like, lean in. Lean into Jesus so you can hear his soft, still voice, his voice that leads you to the soft, quiet waters, his voice that wants to shepherd you. It says in Luke that my sheep know my voice and no one will snatch them out of my hand. But in order for no one to snatch you out of his hand, you have to know his voice. And in order to know his voice, you have to put yourself in surroundings to hear him. And I think that is just such a message for this world right now, in a world that's text notification going off, Instagram going off, Snapchat going
Bro,
off.
turn your do not disturb on, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I even have, like, a thing called a brick. I actually was listening to
Okay.
Jonathan Precluda talking
Not
about
sponsored.
it. No, not sponsored, but Brick sponsor us. And you literally tap your phone on it, and it just completely shuts off everything except for, like, if I were to get a call from, like, my mom or something, it would let me get it, because I know my mom's not just going to randomly call me most of the time that early in the morning when I'm doing my quiet time. So that's one thing. And then I also even want to speak to the person that really feels like they're dwelling in the quiet and get like a vision or a message from God of somewhere to go. And kind of a story that this happened to me. I was over spring break. I was in Kona, Hawaii, with one of my friends, and we were driving up this mountain. It's called
Shout out Daniel.
Yeah, shout out Daniel. He's about to be on here. So we're driving up this mountain called Mauna Kea, and you're driving up, and halfway to the top, you have to pull to the side and take 30 minutes to just, like, get your body to adjust to the altitude so you don't get altitude sickness. And I was sitting there, we were just talking. I was like, wait, maybe we have something to learn in this. Like, it seems so simple, but I think so often, at least this happens to me, is I feel like the Lord's calling me to something, and I get so focused on the journey going up that I forget about the target that I'm aiming for. And it's like, we are just trekking up this mountain trying to get where God's calling us to, and we're not dwelling in the quiet, so we get spiritually sick. And
Yeah.
I think that it's so important that we root our calling in the quiet because, like I even said earlier, what we cultivate in the quiet is going to carry us in the chaos. And when you're operating in a countercultural way, in a way that operates fully living for God, which is going to be countercultural, you're going to have chaos attack you because the enemy hates it. And so we have to root that in the quiet. And I think that's so important. And I don't know. I know we're kind of getting close, but I would love to hear any thoughts you have added to that or just thoughts you want to get out there on the quiet place if you have anything else.
Yeah. Lord, like, I will say, Lord, like, speaks to me most in the quiet of, like, I like, thought I knew what the Lord's voice was. And the Lord speaks to me through his word, first and foremost, but also through people, situations, like Cooper was saying. But he also just speaks to you in, like, yeah, like, even last night, I was sitting in the quiet about today and this. Even, like, okay, behind the scenes, Wednesday, we came to film this podcast, and, like, sweet Cooper, had, like, set up everything, and, like, was so ready to film, and I, like, told him I was, I guess. And I got here, and I had some quiet time with Jesus, and, like, I sat there, and I don't know, I was just like, I need to sit with him. And, like, I didn't get the go ahead to film this, and so we didn't. Like,
Yeah.
and then, like, over the period of a week, I, like, got the go ahead from him of, like, oh, like, whatever that looks like with my time with Jesus. But it, that's how he speaks to me a lot of the time, is just like a peace. Chaos is not from the Lord, ultimately. And I was reminded when Cooper was talking about just slowing down to hear him of First Samuel, when Samuel's, like, sitting, and he's in the temple, and he keeps hearing, he doesn't yet have a relationship with the Lord, and he keeps hearing the Lord's voice say Samuel, and he keeps going to Eli 3 times, and he's like, here I am, for you called me. And eventually it says that Eli perceived that it was the Lord talking to him, and he tells Samuel to go back and to say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And I just think about, like, how many times has the Lord been saying, Lauren, 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 and I miss what's to follow and what he's going to say after just calling my name, because I'm so caught up in who's calling my name. Like,
Yeah.
who is it? What is this world calling me to?
That's good.
And that can manifest itself in so many different ways and mask itself in so many spiritual language things. But it just boils down to, like, are you available to hear him? Yes, say Cooper. But then whatever he has to follow, I mean, yeah, it's just so incredible. Yeah, anyways. And then another story that I was reminded of was Luke 10. I think I bookmarked it. Martha and Mary are hosting Jesus. And Martha is welcoming him into her home, and she's, like, running around trying to prepare. And we all know what that looks like when we're hosting. Like,
Yeah.
mom's running around, we're running around, like, trying to prepare. I mean, she's cooking, she's getting stuff from the neighbors to, like, prepare, whatever that looks like, the home. And Mary just goes, and it says that, and she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching, but Martha was distracted with much serving. And she goes to the Lord and is like, why are we going to let Mary just, like, sit at your feet when I'm doing all this stuff to prepare for you? And it's just so interesting, because how often are we like that? How much are we like Martha and just, like, running around preparing for the Lord, doing stuff for his kingdom, sitting in his word, like, reading it, writing our journals down, whatever. And that's all awesome stuff. And he loves to see what we're doing for him and living for him. But also, like, we can so learn from Mary and, like, sit at his feet.
Yeah.
And that's where he can transform us and teach us. And it doesn't have to be a long-winded, beautifully written prayer. It can literally just be God, I don't have the words right now, but I'm inviting you to just give me peace, or I'm open to whatever you want to tell me in this time. And just sitting with a posture of expectancy, but also just letting yourself dwell in his spirit, because he is a God of rejuvenation and he refreshes our souls. He loves to do it. And calling him by your favorite name for him. Like Abba has been mine recently, of like, he's my father, and I can just sit in Abba's presence and I don't have to like bring him a bunch of things, and that's okay. And he loves just to sit in my presence and instill me with confidence, boldness, whatever that is for the day. So, I think just like quieting our distracted minds is so important. If you are feeling convicted by your own busyness, or even like me talking about what I was fasting from 21 Days of Prayer, like media, if you feel like you constantly have to be listening to something, watching something, if you can't get ready in the morning without listening to something, like maybe that's a wake-up call of like, I've got to be okay with being alone.
Yeah, that's good.
And it is tricky. That's why it's fasting. It's not supposed to be easy because it's dependency. It was really hard for me, but I crave it now. And I will go days where I'm like, oh, I'm getting too dependent. I need to do that again. So if you're feeling convicted by that, or just called out a little bit, then maybe that's something you should ask the Lord and bring that to him. So I would highly encourage that.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. And I just think that's so cool, even talking about Mary, because like if we sit at his feet, we'll go where his feet go. And I think the defining moment of when you really notice if the quiet place is something you're rooting yourself in is if you're gonna listen to the whisper, even if it drives you to the wilderness. Like,
yeah,
Jesus goes to the wilderness. Like, are you gonna listen to his whisper, even if the wilderness is where it's calling you? And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. That was such a powerful moment, just hearing what the Lord's been doing in you, and even just some of the wisdom you have on that. So thanks again for coming on, and thank you guys for listening. This is The Overflow, and we'll see you guys in 2 Wednesdays. See you again soon.